everyone, and welcome back to the journey of the young Christian man. It's been a minute. I have since lost facial hair, and I have a new guest, Derrick Scott III.
What's up?
How you doing, Derrick?
I'm doing good, man. How you doing, Nick?
I'm doing great. Happy to have you here.
I'm glad to be here. Excited.
Yeah, and so we figured Derrick would be one of the as kind of one of my most recent mentors and leaders. He would be one of the this is kind of the series finale. So Derrick, why don't you take it away with a bio of yourself? Of course, all of our listeners know the structure of the podcast because they've seen every single episode and have watched
every single one. So
absolutely, go for it.
So Derrick Scott III. I am the creative producer and director of Studio Wesley, which this podcast is a production of, and I am also the executive director of Campus to City Wesley Foundation, which serves college-age young adults in Jacksonville and St. Augustine. And I'm the co-lay leader of the Florida Conference of the United Methodist Church. And I do a lot of things. I also am associate director of learning and innovation for the Texas Methodist Foundation based in Austin, Texas. I'm an Enneagram 5, INTP in the Myers-Briggs. I love my life. I've got a dog and a cat. Dog named Winston, cat named Julian. I live in Jacksonville. And what else should I say, Nick? Is that good?
That's a good intro, and then we'll delve into past trauma and the whole story of your life.
You're going all the way? Okay. All right, cool. Yeah. Let's go. Yeah.
That's awesome. So normally our first question is when did you establish your faith? But actually, yeah, you can just give us that and anything else you'd like to add.
Yeah. Okay. So me and my faith. I came to Jesus at 4 years old. I wasn't raised United Methodist. I grew up in a Baptist congregation. The denomination is actually called National Baptist or South Southern Baptist, predominantly African-American Baptist congregation in Jacksonville. And I came to Jesus at 4 years old. I don't remember walking down the aisle as we did in that congregation, in that tradition. I don't remember that day of walking down the aisle. I do remember the day I was baptized, but I'll just say there are things that have to happen before you get to baptism. And so while my core memory is the day I was baptized, there are just these other things that I had to have done, like walk down the aisle, answer the questions my pastor asked me, be presented before the church and affirmed by them to be baptized. So again, don't remember any of those things, but I remember the day that I was baptized. I was 4 years old. It was July of 1984. And I remember going into the water, and I remember the pastor, it was Reverend Young, dunking me. And 4-year-old squirmy little kid. So as I'm being dunked, I turned my head, and out of the corner of my eye, I saw this blob version of myself at the bottom of the pool. And, kind of freaked me out. But as soon as I saw it, I came out of the water. And as I was walking back up the steps, soaking wet, I felt new. And I to talk about it, it seems weird because it's a 4-year-old reasoning, and all I'll say is I felt new. I felt like a new creation, and I knew a couple of things. And again, I wouldn't have used these words, but these are the feelings. I knew that Jesus loved me, and I knew that there was a call on my life. And I remember coming out of the water, and that was the thing that was sort of in me. And so that was the beginning of it, right? And because of the family that I was raised in, we were a ministry family. The women were the strongest in the family, still are. but we were a ministry family. So we were at church 4 days on the easy week. First one's there, last one's to leave. My grandmother ran the Sunday school and had a midweek class for African Americans who needed help reading, writing, and doing basic math kind of stuff. My mom did women's ministry stuff and other leadership positions. I was in youth choir at the church that I grew up in. When you joined the church and you got baptized, you immediately went into the youth choir. That was what our youth group was. So I was in the choir and I started singing at 4 years old, and on youth usher board, and was on youth finance team as well. And and got a key to the church at 10 and age 10, and was helping lead youth group, produced like some musicals and all kinds of stuff like that. So that's the world I grew up in. And so I got my first Bible when I was 6. Started going to church conferences with my great grandmother at 7. Like I said, I was on finance committee around 9, 10. And that was the world I grew up in. And so I have been actively working out my relationship with Jesus since I was 4. I really, and again, like, there's a dynamic of being 4, 5, 6 following Jesus, and there's a different dynamic in my teenage years and things like that. But again, the church I grew up in order to get out of kindergarten Sunday school class, to graduate out of that class, you had to be able to recite Psalm 1, Psalm 23, and Psalm 100 by heart. And so those are, I can recite those Psalms. Because it's in me, and then other scriptures, obviously, over the years. But so I'm my privilege, and I say that, I mean it. My privilege is the family that I was raised in, the church that I was raised in. I was just really nurtured in the Christian faith, and in so many respects, that's the ground by which the rest of my life really has grown out of. And I can draw straight lines to things that I'm doing today and the nurturing I received in this church, Tabernacle Baptist Institutional Church. I'll also say I ended up leaving that church in my teenage years and became a United Methodist. And I'm grateful for the things that United Methodism has given me. I am a United Methodist for sure, and very committed to this denomination. But Tabernacle Baptist Institutional Church, I exist because that place still stands. And very grateful for just, again, the nurturing that space gave me. There also was a little bit of trauma too, but the nurturing, the encouragement, the opportunities, right? Like, yeah. So that's kind of the beginning, Nick.
Yeah, absolutely. It sounds like you just hit the ground running, which is kind of rare. Like, I feel like you don't hear about that, especially at such a young age. Like, somebody who's just like I say I'm a Christian. I have these values, and this is pretty much what I believe. But like, I'm still, you sounded like in your teenage years, you're like, I want to be United Methodist. And I'm still like, I don't know where I'm at, and that's kind of the whole point of this, is like figuring that out, the journey.
Yeah. Well, Nick, let me add again. You're getting the highlight reel, and you're getting the positive highlight reel, right? So like, the church that I grew up in, incredible nurturing opportunities. Again, there's some trauma there, right? There's doubt along the way. And I say this, I've been following Jesus now 41 years. Sorry. I might even try to edit that out. I often say I have been following Jesus for 41 years, and I have needed every single day of these 41 years. I am where I am today because of walking out my faith every day. And that has not always been pretty. It has not always been highlight reel, Instagram worthy at all. In fact, most of it is like, ooh, you have needed every day. Like, yes. So
yeah, that's definitely understandable. And feel free to, unpack that. Like, if there are parts that, you're like, I went to the Baptist church and, we had a very nurturing community, but there were these instances where I had some like doubts, or would you say there were points that you were hung up with your faith, and you were like, well, are you kind of in a stagnant area where you
Yeah.
weren't as sure?
Yeah. So in the church that I grew up in, one of the things that I didn't know about myself, we at the time didn't know how to identify either. When I say we, like the church community, is what to do with a nerdy kid who feels deeply but doesn't emote very well. And so if you can imagine, like, younger Derrick, I would say little Derrick, but I'm still little. Um, um, if you imagine younger Derrick, people already know that I'm book smart. You know that I have fascination with learning. They already know this, but I also don't emote very well. Like you don't know what I'm feeling on the outside,
Yeah.
right? But on the inside, I'm feeling deeply, deeply. Things are impacting me in profound ways that I can't even express. Like not only am I not emoting, but I couldn't tell you that like something hurt me or something confused me.
Right.
So you take that kid and you drop him in essentially a family church. And one of the things about the church that I grew up in is that everybody's kind of related to everybody. It was a large congregation for our denomination, like 300 members, which is a large congregation for the church that I grew up in, the network of churches we were in. Mostly everybody's related to each other. And so there's a lot of teasing and there's a lot of joking around and people being made fun of, and it's not being that big of a deal. And for this guy, all of that teasing didn't seem like a joke. For this guy, all of that teasing seemed like I got the message that something was wrong with me early on. Now, at 4 years old, again, like I said, there's some things I knew. I knew that Jesus loved me and there was a call in my life. I also knew at 4 that I wanted to be a husband and a father, and which that one's really interesting based on what people know about me today. And the third thing I knew at 4, but couldn't articulate it, was that I was attracted to men. I also knew that at 4 years old. And so I'm holding all of that inside 4, 5, 6-year-old body, right? And particularly the attraction to men part, I knew early on that was not acceptable. And in the space that I grew up in. And just so people know where the story ends, I am an out gay man in the United Methodist Church. I am a queer affirming campus minister. And so just so people know where the story ends, because I'm going to talk about my story in a very specific way at this point, just to give a true context. But essentially, like, I understood that to be attracted to men was unacceptable in the space that I grew up in. It was not a biblical way of living in the world. And so I took all of that teasing to be related to that. And again, because I'm so young, I don't even know that those are the connections I'm drawing. Like, it's work that I've done since then.
Right.
I'm like, oh, I took all of this teasing and all of this joking, even though they were doing it to everybody. Like, everybody got teased. Okay.
Yeah.
Everybody got made fun of. Everybody, like, but when it happened to me, I thought it was an indication that something was wrong with me. So because, again, I'm not realizing that I'm taking all of this so personally, I'm feeling deeply, I'm being deeply hurt, I'm being traumatized in church, but you don't know it. Like, you don't know that's happening on the outside because I'm not showing it. I'm not emoting pain and trauma. And so that, then you just think I'm okay and people keep teasing. And I laugh about it now because I'm like, wow, like, it's so complicated and complex. And I'm just a kid, right? So early on, I'm working out what it means to be deeply loved and affirmed and feel like I'm called in church, and what it feels to be rejected and
Mm.
picked on and publicly ostracized is what it felt like. I'm working out what that looks like and what that means very early. I don't think even a 9-year-old should be doing that. But that is my story.
Mm.
And so, yeah, the the thing early on for me is working out those tensions. I should say here that at 9 years old, I got the opportunity. This starts a new sort of angle to my story. I got this opportunity to be in a theater production of Shenandoah at a local equity theater house called the Alhambra Dinner Theater here in Jacksonville. And so I was at 9 years old. I was in this show. I played Gabriel in Shenandoah. It was a 8-week show, and there were 8 shows a week. I was paid to do it, and obviously there were rehearsals on the front end, and it was very disruptive for my family, but they were very supportive and getting me to the theater every night of the week, except
Oh
we
my.
had Monday nights off, right? And so that put me in a very different space, and I met people that are very different from the world that I grew up in church. Obviously, the theater world and church world, there's not a lot of connection between those two worlds, right? It was also the theater world was a white world, and I grew up in an African American, a Black congregation. So that also was a new thing for me as well. And so it opened up my world. And it really, I'm profoundly shaped by that experience. And that took me down this different road of going to arts middle school and arts high school. I'm still in my church for the most part, but I'm starting to feel like my gifts don't really land in the church that I'm in. And I'm trying to find new ways to explore my gifts. And the church is trying to open up opportunities to explore my gifts too, because they don't want to lose me, right? But because of this other experience, it's starting to get more complicated. So it's not just complicated inside at that point. It's now becoming complicated like in the church, okay? Nothing ever blew up. There's never like big come to Jesus meeting. It just, as in the reflection, they were trying to make space for this guy who knew he had more gifts and more imagination than the church had made room for in the past. So I'll just say that whenever I go back to my home church, and usually it's only for a funeral, but whenever I go back to my home church, the folks are still there who were there when I was a kid. I was like, we used to do these plays, and Derrick just led us so well. And we used to do these songs in the choir that Derrick would bring to us. And they still love and celebrate me. I have not been outside of those funerals. I've not been in that church since I was like 16 on a regular basis.
Yeah.
And they still love and celebrate me. I'm indebted to them. So again, because I'm being exposed to all this new stuff, and I don't know how those gifts land in the congregation I was raised in, I'm starting to wonder where I fit. There's still the whole being attracted to men thing that I'm not talking about out loud, and I actually, I'll cover a different part of that in a moment. But it's in that space, particularly in my high school years, that I got introduced to a church plant, a United Methodist church plant. And my vocal director was like, hey, we're starting this new church. I'm the music director. Would love for some of y'all here is Douglas Anderson School of the Arts. Would love for some of y'all to come help us start this congregation, help us start the music program. And I said to myself, I'll take 6 weeks from Black church. I'll go to white church for 6 weeks. Then I'll go back to Black church. I'll bring some stuff back. It'll be great. Essentially, I never really went back. I mean, I kind of went back. I kind of never really went back.
Yeah.
So let me stop there, let you ask some questions, and then I can maybe continue on in some stuff.
Yeah, there's a lot there. And thank you for, I mean, giving us so much. I was gonna say you kind of backtracking. You're in the church world heavily. It seems, there 4 nights a week, and then the theater world, which I've also, that becomes your life. Luckily, I've only had to be a pit musician, so that's kind of like a lesser form of being indebted to the theater. But like,
it's still real down there.
You kind of sign your soul away to the whatever playhouse or theater you're working at for a little bit, because I mean things got to happen to get that show going. So you're deeply involved with a very faith-based community that's like, trying to enrich your faith and get one side of you, and then this other aspect of your creativity is being taken from a completely different organization with probably different values. For
sure.
And are there like moments where I'm sure people probably knew that you were a church guy in the theater?
Yeah, for sure.
Are you discussing your faith with these people?
Yes, but it's interesting. I was never a good evangelist in the way that particularly Southern Christians think about evangelism. But I could not talk about church, and I could not talk about Jesus, because Jesus has been my guy from almost the beginning. He's been my Wesleyan theology tells me he's actually been my guy since I knew he was going to be my guy. And church has always been a huge part of my existence. So I was living it. I was trying to live it. And I'll say like ninth grade got really hard because in ninth grade specifically, I didn't know how to really live for Jesus as I'm trying to like be popular or be in the in crowd. And so there's a moment in ninth grade that I was trying to like work out what it meant to be a follower of Jesus and trying to live that way. And I'm struggling because like I'm cussing now and like talking overtly about sexuality. I'm not out personally. I'm not out, but talking more about sexual things with people, but also kind of being in some gossip circles, and
absolutely,
it's all just like really rough, right? And I know that it's not the person that I want to be.
But that's just ninth grade.
Yeah, it's not ninth grade. And here's the deal: like, it's not even the stuff. Like, it's not the words I'm saying. It's not the conversations. It's not even like, I mean, yes, it's like gossip, but not. It's this other thing. It's I'm betraying myself somehow, and I haven't figured out exactly what it is that I'm doing that's a betrayal to myself, but I know that I am. And so this one morning, I probably said a few words that I didn't want to, so I've got my mom's Bible with me in my backpack. So I grabbed my mom's Bible, and I'm sitting outside. And as I'm sitting outside trying to read my mom's Bible, a bunch of classmates who I had just like minutes before had been with them talking about things and saying things. They come around the corner. They see me with the Bible, like, oh, look at Derrick. He trying to be Christian now. He trying to be Christian. And I got so angry with them. I still have the Bible in my hand, and I point the Bible at them. I was like, y'all leave me the F alone. But I didn't say the F. I said the actual F word. Y'all leave me the F. And I remember, and it was just like this moment. It's like inside of me, I'm like, what am I doing?
Yeah.
But I'm just so conflicted. And some of this is also trying to figure out not just how to be, how to hide my sexuality because I'm afraid of that coming out, but some of that's also like I'm trying to figure out how to be Black enough so those classmates are actually Black. And so I've always struggled with being Black enough and being sort of accepted in the Black community. So that's also happening. There's just so much confliction happening inside of me. And I, A, don't have language to talk about it. B, I don't know who to talk to about it. And I'm trying, I still feel, and this is probably the piece that fully, that not full, this is probably the piece that like creates so much of the conflict inside of me. My assumption is I should be the person living for Jesus the most. I should be flawless in the ways that I am living for Christ. I remember saying as early as middle school, I don't get to make mistakes because Jesus is counting on me. You know,
Wow.
it's like, I know it's like, wait,
That's
okay, so what are we talking about right now? Like, yeah, all of that inside of this guy. And it's just, again, so much depth, so much complexity, but I'm still 14.
Yeah.
You know,
I mean, that's crazy. I feel like some of those things, they kind of like I'll be catch myself in gossip with my friends, and I'll say something, and I'll be like, "Well, that was mean, and I shouldn't have said it." Like I'll say that out loud, and they'll be like, "Yeah." And I'm doing that now at 20. Like, that's impressive that you had the forethought to be like, you know what, this is not it at 14. I mean, like, I feel like I was not intellectual enough to like realize the consequences of my actions and be like, wait, this isn't really what I feel or believe, and this is not how I want to be perceived.
I appreciate that. I'll just say though, Nick, the other side of it is, and again, there are these layers of all of it. I put so much pressure on myself that I probably hurt myself. I probably hurt myself emotionally for sure, psychologically, spiritually, and in many ways, that's the stuff that I've spent majority of my adult life unlearning.
Mm-hmm.
These ways that it isn't that I shouldn't live for Jesus. Obviously I should. Yes, at 14, live for Jesus. I remember a pastor of mine challenged me because I was these high standards still existed into my 20s and early 30s that I placed on myself. I didn't talk about these standards. I just tried. This is what I lived by. And I remember a mentor of mine, a pastor, saying to me in my 20s, as he was discovering this part of me, he's like, Derrick, I go out on a limb and say, I think you're harder on yourself than Jesus is. And he didn't stop there. He's like, so I'd like you to reflect on what it might mean that you would hold yourself to a higher standard than Jesus.
That's kind of just like, I don't know. I feel like I'd be taken aback.
Very much. And it's the kind of thing that makes you, like, if you take that kind of, and I took him seriously because I trusted him. And I'll just say for those listening, this is not like a heterodox Christian. In fact, this is an evangelical Christian. This is a person who probably is not excited that I'm an out gay man, and unapologetic about that now. But in those days, he saw the ways that self-aversion, self-judgment, the ways that I was passing judgment on myself, which had nothing to do with the Spirit of Christ. He saw that. And I'm really grateful to him. His name's Scott Crawford, actually. Great guy. All right, Nick, I can talk about this stuff all day long. So, guide me.
I mean, so yeah, and then that we can transition to that next part of kind of what you just said, where you're at 14, you're dealing with all this stuff, and you're like, I want to figure it out, but I don't have the vocabulary to. Mm-hmm. Sometimes recently I've been dealing with my own issues and like communicating the thoughts that are in my head, because I'm very quick to speak before crafting the words I want to use carefully. So I'll say something that means like, the target's here and I have to like pull the ship back to where what I meant, and that it can just be very frustrating. So I understand the not having the vocabulary to express what you're feeling, but then also not having the audience, because you don't want to go to the people who are just like, wow, like, back to the teasing. That's not where you want to be. So maybe talk a little more about that. Like, you're in this spot, you're feeling a lot, you don't have the words to say it, you don't have the audience. Where do you go?
Yeah. This is one of the ways that my relationship with Jesus just becomes so important. For me, this is my journey that I'm describing. This is not everybody's journey. There's almost like there's Jesus, and then there is the momentary perception of Jesus. And the momentary perception of Jesus, particularly in my teen years, was just really off. It's really off. And Jesus was constant grace towards me. So in this really weird way, always afraid that I'm not measuring up. And sort of like what Peter says in the Gospel of John, who else am I going to hang out with? Derrick Scott Standard Version, y'all. Who else? Where else am I going to go? You're the one whose words bring life. That's what Peter says. You're the one whose words bring life. Who else am I going to go to? And so for me, in many ways, it was always back to Jesus, back to Jesus, back to Jesus, and figuring out the ways that I was responding to a construct of Jesus that was much more informed by church people and my experiences in church, not informed by the Jesus I was encountering in scripture and encountering in my spiritual life. Let me name here, just to zoom out, really am speaking subjectively, like, and someone might take this and try to like paint an objective picture of people's experience of God based on the stories that I'm telling. And I just want to be really careful. Like, when I talk about my relationship with Jesus, I really am talking about my relationship with Jesus, which is helpful for some folks and not helpful for others. It is cheered on in some respects of having a personal relationship with Christ. But in the ways that we try to aggregate that and try to like superimpose that, like, so when I say, 20 years later, it was Jesus who told me to come out of the closet. That's like, people like, whoa now. And I just need you to know, same thing going on. Same thing. It's Jesus who led me out of depression, my teenage years of depression. It's Jesus who led me out of that and through it, right? Yeah, same Jesus that's like, hey, man, I want you to work at the brewery. Yeah, I want you to work at the brewery. Same Jesus, same stuff going on. And is it perfect? Like, am I perfect in my experience of Jesus? No. And I'll just say, again, this is all zoom out, parenthetical. I am not being graded on my ability to hear Jesus accurately. My relationship with Christ, if it's graded on anything, it is graded on my trust in Jesus' ability to get me to where I need to be and to be the person he's calling me to be. That's the thing I'm graded on. Yeah. And so I want to come back and just say, every time I say, and usually I say I could have sworn I heard Jesus say, I do that because, like, I don't know, be careful. But this is a subjective experience that I am talking about. So back to the point. Who did I go to? I went to Jesus, which is beautiful, but also because it's subjective, it didn't have the audience, right? And so part of my journey as an adult was finding that audience, finding a community of followers of Jesus that I could talk about the things that I think I hear Jesus saying to me. And they can be like, sounds about right. Or they can be like, I'm gonna need you to go back over that again for me, Derrick. So yeah, that to answer your question, that's it, I mean, it does go back to Jesus, at least in my teenage years. I just kept coming back to Jesus. Yeah.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Like, I mean, it seems like this is a kind of a universal experience where people go through something, or be going through something, and they really, either they're too closed off and they do have an audience, but they don't want to talk to them, or they just don't feel like anybody will hear them. And so, though these moments kind of suck, like nobody wants, it's like, oh boy, I can't wait to feel like this. Going through them and relying on your faith has to, it's like weightlifting, you're building that spiritual muscle.
Exactly.
And as much as it sucks in the moment, it has to do wonders for building your faith. So you got out on the other side of that. Where did you go now? You talked about, like, you're having trouble evangelizing. Are you trying to do that? Are you trying to talk to others about?
Yeah, so it's really funny. In ninth grade, same ninth grader who's got the Bible in his hand, straight away from me. I lead a Bible study. And it's a mess. Like, I'm a mess. Like, the things I'm doing, people are talking about, and then, like, I'm gonna go lead this Bible study.
Yeah.
In ninth grade. It's just messy. Oh my gosh. And then a couple years I don't lead a Bible study. 10th, 11th grade, I don't lead a Bible study. And then 12th grade year, become president of the Bible club. And I was not looking for that, but I did. And 12th grade was not as messy as 9th grade, but 12th grade was still like, what am I doing? What am I doing?
Yeah, and that comes with a whole, other like slew of problems where you're transitioning from one part of your life to.
Absolutely. So yes, like and this is what I mean. Like, I can't, as much as I'd love to separate my faith from, who I am in school. Again, I was elected president just because, I don't know. Actually, don't know why I was elected president, because actually it doesn't make sense to me still to this day. I've got a friend from high school. Her name's Tracy, and Tracy should have been elected president. Like, that's the way it was actually supposed to go. And Tracy was a couple of minutes late because of traffic. And so I had to give the talk that morning before we did the vote.
Oh my.
And so I gave the talk, ended up getting elected. But it should have been Tracy. It really should have been. So I still don't really know. And like, I don't, yeah, it's interesting. That's an interesting moment. So to answer your question, I'm just figuring it out and walking through these open doors. Also, that church that I, left my family's church and went to that church plant, that many of the folks in that church plant are a part of high school. Like, it's either teachers that are going to church there, the students who are, right. And so there's some overlapping of groups there as well. Eventually, okay.
I was gonna say that must make such like even more of kind of a mess if like I feel like I've certainly experienced that, because I have teachers that go to the church that I'm at, and you don't want to say that it's like two different sides of you, but it is.
It definitely feels like it has to be.
Right. And so you're like wearing, you're behaving one way in this context and then a different way in the other, and you're like, this doesn't feel right. And then if somebody sees that and then you see them at church, you're like, whoa, this is weird.
Yeah. And this is important, Nick. Part of the reason that I lead college students the way that I do, I don't make y'all do anything. And you always have the ability, like, to find a way to get around whatever I've asked you to do. It's because I think it's really important at that stage of your life to figure out who you really are. And unfortunately, that is not an experience that simply comes from someone saying this is who you are. It actually comes from a lot of deep work around agency and autonomy. And this connects because it requires then integration. When I'm not telling you who you're supposed to be, yes, it leaves this vacuum where you have to figure it out. And you've got to figure out what it means to be, in my case, I had to figure out what does it mean to be a church guy who really loves church. You got a person who has already figured out I have to separate church life from my actual spiritual life because they're not the same things. I'd already learned that. And then I got to figure out who I'm going to be when I'm not at church.
Yeah.
And am I the same guy? And how am I the same guy? And how am I going to be right? And like, and so this is hugely important for me that you figure out who Nick Hart is. I would rather you figure out who Nick Hart is than you become a United Methodist. Don't get me wrong, Nick. You know how much I want you to be a United Methodist. But I want you to be a United Methodist because that is core to who Nick is. I do not want to superimpose a construct onto you. And part of what makes that season of high school going into college age difficult is that so often constructs are being placed on us. It was placed on us from our parents and the families that we grew up in. Rightly so. They raised us. They nurtured us. They are the ones that are helping us move into adulthood. But really important that at some point, Nick makes a decision. I love your parents. I hope they know how much I love them. But at some point, Nick's got to make a decision that Steve and Colleen are like, why would you do that? You've got to, because otherwise you're never going to self-differentiate. You're never,
right.
And that's when all of these conflicting things about our being start coming into view, where you start having to figure out who are you going to be. And that the question of my whole life that was asked way too early by super nerdy kid. Derrick, who you gonna be? Who you gonna be? Are you gonna figure out how you're gonna live in this church that's teasing you all the time, but also giving you lots of opportunity? Are you gonna be a theater kid? Are you gonna be a black kid? Or are you gonna be a white kid? Are you gonna be a straight kid or a gay kid? And these are all great questions, mind you. They're great questions for folks closer to adulthood.
Right. Not when you're trying to learn about calculus
and Jesus has really worked all things out for good and glory. So no worries. And I've got a great therapist, friends, if anybody's like, oh my gosh, this guy. But I mean, that for me is, again, hugely important. And so that's the thing that's happening, right? Like the thing that's happening is all of these different parts of my being are growing up, and it's and the work, particularly of adulthood, is how does all of that land into one human being? And so today we do a fast forward because this interview's gone pretty long, and I don't know how long you want to take it, but I'm going to fast forward a little bit and just say, today, I am much more integrated as a person. And I have figured out how to follow Jesus as an institutional United Methodist. And what I mean by that is someone who lives inside of the institution. And I'm all about college-aged young adults. I'm all about campus ministry. And I work really hard. I work really hard at the work that I do. And I have a relationship with people whose work is in the brewery scene of Jacksonville. And people see different sides of the whole Derrick. But they are, and yes, I'm an out gay man. I'm also single. And I'm navigating all of that. I I am on the journey, haven't figured it out completely, but I'm on the journey of living an integrated life. And you'll see certain parts of me at certain points because they make sense. So there's a way that I talk when I'm working behind the bar and pouring beers. You're just going to have to understand that's the vernacular of that space. And then there's a way that I talk when I'm preaching. Same Derrick, friends. Same Derrick. And I make mistakes and I'm still figuring out stuff. And life is in transition even now. But same Derrick, man. And same Derrick who is on the journey, still on the journey of figuring out what it means to be a devoted follower of Jesus Christ.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you do such a great job of being open and honest about that. Like every time you mention, I am going to screw up. And I loved what you said earlier about it's not my job to hear God's voice exactly, but it is my job to have faith that he will lead me exactly where I need to be. I mean, that's it. Right. And I think we can kind of wrap up here with like, I'll make this a question, but how can we focus on having that faith that God's going to come through and not say, not be hard on ourselves and say, well, I didn't hear him right in this instance, so I'm a bad Christian.
Yeah.
I think that's a very common experience where people are like, well, God's not going to be proud of me for what I'm doing right now. I have a lot of friends who are like, I'm not there spiritually, like, I'm not at that point with Jesus enough where, I can like talk to him, and because I think they feel some sort of shame or like they haven't, they've been hearing God's voice wrong. But how can we maybe instead go, okay, I have faith that everything's going to end up okay.
Yeah. Okay. So here's the deal. This is beautiful. I think it's beautiful what I'm about to say. But I really want to. I want to speak directly to men. I want to speak directly to young men on this because, and I'm going to frame it for that group of folks. Following Jesus is hard work, and it may look like there are these people who following Jesus is just easy. No issues, no doubts. They wake up in the morning, they have their 30 minutes of quiet time, but they're praying without ceasing all day long. And over lunch, they're having deep theological conversations with the other Theo bros, and they're just slam dunking it all day long. And
naturally.
And then at night, they're making room. They got 4 Bible studies they do across the week. They got a podcast and they're leading a church and their families and that guy, if that guy is actually doing it, it is blood, sweat, and tears. Following Jesus is work. With all work, for some of us, we get a stride, right? Mm-hmm. With work, sometimes the work is like, I know exactly what I'm doing. And sometimes the work is, I might get fired. But I need you to know it's work. And this is where theologically, I'm not a Calvinist. Work is a part of it. We're told in James, faith without work is dead. And so, men, I need you to not be afraid of the work that comes with following Jesus, both the internal, emotional, psychological work, the intellectual work, the physical, interpersonal work of living out your faith in a way that people really do get to experience Jesus through your life. All of that's work. And for God, you can't be afraid of the work. There's also grace, okay? And this work is not about like making an A. This work is not, you're not being graded on the work. It's just what comes with the journey. And so I think if I had any contribution to this podcast, the journey is a journey that is, you got sweat, and I hate sweating so much. But this journey comes with sweat. This journey comes with tears. And yeah, prick your finger every now and then doing the work, figuratively, friends, figuratively. And guys, we just can't be afraid of the spiritual work. Yeah, the scripture says, work out your salvation. Literally, the words, work out your salvation with fear and trembling. And I'll just say, the fear and trembling, I imagine that fear and trembling is not from a place of anxiety. That's like when you're lifting weights and you are lifting at a weight that is actually heavier than you are used to. The fear and trembling of that. I know that everybody loves me doing that. I hate working out. You have no idea how much I hate working out. Like I hate it so much, and yet I have to do it if I'm gonna live the life that I'm called to live. And so that's what I just say, Nick. Like it's the work, and we don't need to be afraid of the work. I'm not afraid. It's not about works righteousness. Jesus is the only one that gets me to heaven, so I can work and not be afraid that I'm like trying to work for my salvation. Not at all. I work because of my salvation. I'm walking because Jesus has invited me to follow him. And so, yeah, guys, we can't be afraid of the spiritual work and the ways that spiritual work really does call us to do our best in this world. Yes, not because we're being graded on our best. We just got to be willing to do the work. We got to put the work in, guys.
Yeah, that's huge. I couldn't have said it better. Like, I mean, that's, yeah, you had a great way of like simplifying it and just nailing it. Do you have any closing remarks?
Nick, I want to thank you for this idea, this podcast, and I know that this is technically like the last episode in the series, but I think I know you've opened up some new conversations in our ministry and in the ministries that we are intersecting with. And just not just the way you've done this, but like even the way you've approached these interviews, like it's just been so good. I just want you to know, Nick, I'm proud of you. I'm proud of the human, the man you're becoming. And I want to invite you to keep going. I want to invite you that on the tough days, do your best. You did your best. You put it in. And on the days that it's easy, be grateful for the easier days, because you'll need to remember those days on the days that like, oh, I just barely did my best to remember that there is a God in heaven that loves and calls me. But I need you to hear this, Nick. I'm so proud of you.
Thank you. I really I do appreciate that, and thank you for giving me this platform to, this is in some aspects been like therapy, because I get to ask these questions and I, kind of talking on my own issues, and it's like I get to share what I've been going through, and then people will have answers of how they've gone through it, and so I hope it can be similar for whoever's listening. And yeah, it's just been a great time. So thank you.
Beautiful, man. Awesome.
All right. Would you like to close us in prayer for the final?
Absolutely. Yeah. Let's pray together.
All right.
Great God. Thanks and praise for all that you are, all that you've done, all that you've given us, especially your son, Jesus Christ. I thank you so much for Nick, for his life, the journey that he's on, the things he's learning. I even thank you for the mistakes he's making and the ways that you're going to use all of it for his good and your glory. Thank you for this podcast and the conversations that Nick has been able to facilitate of what it means to be a young Christian man. He's only scratched the surface. And I'm just grateful, God, that there's so much more that our imaginations have not even dreamed up yet, specifically in this conversation around young men. So Holy Spirit, continue to pour your grace out on Nick as he continues on his journey. All of the guys that he has had the opportunity to talk with, I pray that you would bless them. And oh God, just do what only you can do in the lives of young men. We all need you, but especially the young men. We need you to continue to pour your grace out on us so that we can be the people you're calling us to be, specifically young men, the ways that they can play the roles you've called them to play in the big story of God, as they come alongside young women and young non-binary individuals and gender queer individuals, God. The beautiful diversity that you have created, I pray that young men would find their place in the midst of it and would be able to stand confident, knowing that you love them, you've called them, that you are pouring your grace out on them. So be glorified, specifically in young men, God. And we give you praise and thanks for all of this. In Christ's name, amen.
And thank you, Derrick. And thank you, everyone, for watching. This has been such a great time, and we hope to see you back soon.
Super cool. Yeah.